So good morning, everybody. I want to say that I watched AEW Dynamite last night, and it is the penultimate show. So there's one more show right before Double or Nothing. So, and also too that this was like their Chicago show, and they do well in Chicago with drawing crowds. So that's why they had the steel cage match. So, there were some things that they've had to accomplish on the show, which was, definitely adding matches to the Double or Nothing card, because when you add matches like the week before or like a few days before, it doesn't look good. And then the other thing they had to do with this show was also just, have really a good show, really. So one thing that I liked about the show is that they had a good amount of matches, and they also had to get a good amount of storytelling, because, when there's way too many matches, I feel fatigued. Also, when you have way too many tag team and triple team matches, it makes you feel very fatigued. But they had the right balance. And also, too, there's a good amount of storytelling. There wasn't way too much dialogue. So I was really, really happy with this show. I think this is one of the best shows that they've had, regardless of what people say. So it opened with Will Ospreay and Hangman versus Josh Alexander and Konosuke Takeshita. So Will Ospreay does a head scissors on Josh Alexander. Josh Alexander and Takeshita do a European uppercut, but with a knee strike. Will Ospreay does head scissors on Takeshita. Hangman does a fallaway slam on Takeshita and a moonsault. And then he hits a Death Valley driver on Takeshita. And it was a really great sequence of moves. Like, as I said, one thing I like about Hangman is that he knows when to be a high flyer, he knows when to be a brawler, he knows when to mix it together. And Hangman does a pop-up power bomb on Takeshita. Will Ospreay does a running shooting star press on Takeshita. Hangman and Will Ospreay do a sequence of moves together. Takeshita does a running top rope dive onto Ospreay and Hangman. And Josh Alexander does a Northern Light suplex. He does a very vicious ankle lock on Hangman, like really just rolls him and drags him around. Like, that has to look really vicious. Will Ospreay does a shooting star press on Josh Alexander and then an enziguri. And this was a really great sequence when Hangman did a moonsault at the same time Will Ospreay did a sky twister. Josh Alexander did something that looked like a one-handed F5, which looked really, really vicious. And he needs to kind of do that. That would be a really great finisher. Like that one-handed F5 he did, like where he spun around Will Ospreay and like slammed him on the ground. It looked very vicious. Ospreay hits two Oz cutters. And then Hangman and Will Ospreay almost hit each other. There's some dysfunction between them. They gain their composure. And they do a buckshot lariat and a hidden blade combination. And I believe they did that on Takeshita, if I'm correct. Then they got the pinfall. So it was a really great match because they really teased, are they going to function? Are they going to dysfunction? That the Don Callis family is definitely a very dangerous tag team because I like how big and vicious that they are, really. And their dynamics, really. And I really felt like that Ospreay and Hangman were doing all the finishers, doing all the epic moves on them, because that makes the Don Callis family look strong. Everybody has to hit the big guns on them. And I was really okay with that, because, Don Callis family, as I said, they're the Will Ospreay jobbers. But the point of this was just to say, hey, can these two people function as a team to survive the Don Callis family and then actually get to Double or Nothing, really, it's just so they have a match with each other. So I really felt that this was all really great. And the next match was Ricochet versus Zach Gowen. So at first, I wasn't really interested in seeing this match. I said, maybe people may be offended that it's like Ricochet versus a person that's handicapped. But they did a really great job with this. And I was also concerned about the match because I was saying, hey, Zach Gowen can't get pinfalls on Ricochet or a 2 count or anything like that because it's going to make him look weak, like a one-legged person versus someone who's very athletic. You can't make Ricochet look weak. But they did a great job. There was a really great back and forth with them. And I really think that because a lot of the crowd were into Zach Gowen, I was okay with how this is all executed. I think his charisma helped, make the match more believable, because usually when there's wrestlers with a lot of charisma, that's almost like an energy boost to them. So I felt this was a good match. Zach Gowen chases Ricochet out of the ring and does a he does a move off the top rope onto Ricochet, and then Ricochet hits him with a 450 springboard, a top rope shooting star press, and a vertigo finisher. And there was a bunch of times where he got two counts on Zach Gowen. So I felt hey, maybe Zach Gowen's looking a little too strong. But I also appreciate Ricochet being very vicious with him, because sometimes when it comes to wrestling a handicapped person or like a character like Hornswoggle, or when they do man-on-woman matches in WWE, or referee on a wrestler match, it says something when somebody's going all out on them, because that would make sense for a heel to do that, to be like, oh, well, I'm going to hit you with everything they got because I'm going to be an asshole, really. So I'm totally cool with that. So it was really good. And then Ricochet hits the Spirit Gun. There's this guy named John Ritland on YouTube. He said that Spirit Gun is from Dragon Ball Z. No, that's from Yu Yu Hakusho. Spirit Bomb is from Dragon Ball Z. So it's a good back and forth. I would always say matches like this are a little controversial because you have Zach Gowen, a one-legged man in his 40s, versus Ricochet. So it was definitely very 50-50. Some people may not like this. And then also, too, obviously, his injury and his handicap is like what people are going to remember this for. So it is kind of like, a little bit of like, a bit of exploitation, really. So it is like always going to be a controversial match, really. But it was really, really good. And I'm not sure what they're going to do with Zach Gowen, because I don't want him to become just like the Boom AJ people, because, you don't want to have like Zach Gowen appear all the time unless he wants to be a full-time wrestler, really, So hopefully they don't turn this into, like you said, the Boom AJ, where they're just nonstop, really. I think they even said, like, with Double or Nothing, with All In, the Boom AJ people are going to, like, open the show or something like that. And you saw them in the opening credits a couple of times. So you don't want to kind of, like, take a guest and then just overdo them unless they're going to be a permanent, wrestler like Logan Paul or somebody like that. So they did the Hurt Syndicate versus Top Flight. So this was a very, very quick match, and I appreciate this because honestly, you can't always have long matches on shows, really. So it breaks up the monotony. So I was very happy with this. And then Hurt Syndicate versus Top Flight, like Shelton Benjamin hits a big boot, Bobby Lashley hits a spear onto Dante Martin, then he hits like the full Nelson, also known as the Master Lock. So it was really good. And then I said, yes, this is what you need, because Bobby Lashley is a powerhouse wrestler. He did a flip onto a cage, and a cage fell over and hit Umaga. He's a guy who's lifted the Big Show. He's lifted Viscera. He's done a lot of these big things, really. So you cannot take two wrestlers that look like cruiserweight X Division type of wrestlers and have them have 50-50 matches with Bobby Lashley. This was really great, paying attention to physics. And AEW struggles with physics. A big man shouldn't always be a smaller guy really, really quickly, unless a smaller guy has a lot of fight in it. Like if you do Darby Allin versus Bobby Lashley, I can understand that being like a bit of a 50-50 type of thing, really, because Darby Allin has a lot of endurance. You established that. But with Top Flight and Crew, they're smaller body people, really. So and they've not really kind of done anything that stood out, really. So I would not look at them as people that should be going 50-50 with Bobby Lashley. So I'm happy with, their choice to make Bobby Lashley look very dominant in this. And then what happens is that Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes comes out, and they want to challenge them for the AEW Tag Team Championship, because just remember, it was going to be I believe it was going to be Lance Archer and Brian Cage, but Brian Cage is out on injury now. So I'm definitely really, really okay with that, because definitely with that, Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara, they're the sons of Texas. And yes, Arizona is not Texas, no shit Sherlock, but this is in the Texas area, like the Texas, belt of states, really. And you want to do something with Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes, because they are the sons of Texas. Dustin is from Texas. And, a lot of people who like AEW, who live in Texas, New Mexico, are going to go to Arizona, or a lot of Las Vegas people, so it makes sense to put Dustin on this card. And then the other thing, too, is that Dustin is a brawler. Sammy Guevara is a brawler. He lasts a long time, really. So Hurt Syndicate versus the Sons of Texas is going to be a great match. And also they said that it's going to be Crew versus Hurt Syndicate. No, Crew versus the Sons of Texas. But the Sons of Texas beat them on Collision. And I was like, hell yes, I'm happy with that. Because it would look really, really fucking stupid to see Crew with Leo Rush, fight the Hurt Syndicate. Because, Bobby Lashley just hit them with one spear. That'll be the end of it. Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara versus the Hurt Syndicate. That feels like a pay-per-view level match. That feels like a match that will go a while. That feels like a match where, Dustin can do the Canadian Destroyer and other moves like that. I imagine him hitting that in Shelton. So they're and doing double teams on Bobby Lashley, really. So that feels like a match where they said, hey, we're making the right call. And in addition, Dustin is from Texas. You think of the Von Erichs because he's a trios champion. And then you also think of Dustin with Dusty Rhodes and Cody Rhodes. They're all Texas guys. So this was I was happy that they're having this match on the card. Excellent for AEW. And then what they do is that they also announce that after this match, it's going to be the Hurt Syndicate deciding on the fate of MJF, really. So I really like what they're doing with AEW with AEW, because you see Crew and Top Flight come out, and Crew and Top Flight have issues. And then you also see that both of them want the tag team championship. So both of them have an issue with the Hurt Syndicate. And then MJF, you don't know if he's going to betray the Hurt Syndicate, and you don't know if the Hurt Syndicate's going to betray him. And then you also don't know if they're going to make peace with each other. So you have and then the Sons of Texas come out, and you don't know if the Sons of Texas are going to get screwed over by any of the groups, really. So you have a lot of different options, really. You have Scott Steiner math worth of options about where you're going to go. And I like that type of unpredictability. Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? A through Z. So they decide what they're going to do with MJF. And what happened was that MJF did not come out. So Shelton went backstage to get MJF, and then he's hiding behind Tony Khan. And this was a little controversial because a lot of people say that, honestly, MJF looks dorky and geeky and stupid and silly, but that's kind of MJF's humor. And I think what I like about MJF is that he's kind of really proven that he can kind of do humor and have self-control when he chooses. And I felt with this one, he has self-control. It's like with Bryan Danielson and Kane. There was comedy in that, but Bryan Danielson can be a serious wrestler. I do not see something like MJF doing dance-offs with them, or turning into the New Day with two guys and a white guy type of thing. Really, I really think that the Hurt Syndicate with MJF is going to be good. And Bobby Lashley teases with the thumbs up thing. Is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? Initiate MJF, and they're going to have a contract meeting, so you don't know what's going to happen next week. It could be that they have a match at Double or Nothing. It could be something like, okay, if you screw us over, there's dire consequences. So it's going to be really cool, as well. And then the next match on the card was the Fatal 4-Way with the female wrestlers. It's Toni Storm, Azumi, Sky Blue, and Mina Shirakawa. And they also show a clip of Azumi, because what happened was there was a triple threat match in Japan between Mercedes Moné, Azumi, and I believe it was Mina Shirakawa. And what happened was that Azumi pins Mina Shirakawa, so that means her title goes to her Japanese title. I think her Stardom Japanese title goes from Mercedes Moné to Azumi. And at the end of the match, Mercedes Moné attacks Azumi, and I didn't like that because most people don't know who Azumi is. She's not been established that much in AEW. They kind of just sped through it, really. So I didn't feel that was necessary. But the reason why they did that was just because they wanted Jamie Hayter to come out and stop Mercedes from attacking Azumi to make it babyface and heel dynamic, really. And I'm going to start calling Jamie Hayter Mrs. Powers or Austin Powers, because she kind of reminds me a lot of Austin Powers with how she dresses. She really has that Brit faction type of thing. And then also, Mina Shirakawa wins this. So, it didn't surprise me because Mina Shirakawa is one of Tony Khan's favorites. So I knew that she's going to win this match. And then also, I've seen a lot of AEW. I've been to majority of AEW pay-per-views the last 2 years. So nobody really remembers the Forbidden Door match between Mina Shirakawa and Toni Storm. Everybody remembers the three-way kiss that they had with Mariah May. So with that said, Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa having a match at AEW Double or Nothing is okay. But the problem is we know that Toni Storm is going to win, because there's no way that you're going to take Mina Shirakawa and you're going to have her Mina versus Mercedes. That's going to be a bad match because Toni Storm is long established, really. So you kind of know that it's going to be that. It's really going to be Toni Storm, unless you do a short reign with Mina and then put the towel back on Toni. But I don't think that's going to happen. Mina Shirakawa, in this match, Mina Shirakawa and Assuming they do they exchange a bunch of 2 counts. Sky Blue does an off-rope DDT on Toni Storm. Mina Shirakawa does a Kazadora on Toni Storm. Mina does a top rope dive on Toni Storm. Azumi does a crossbody on Toni Storm. Mina Shirakawa Mia Shirakawa. I don't forget what I wrote in my notes really, because I have a bunch of chicken scratches. I'm not like the best writer, but I don't have the best penmanship. So it looks like really abstract, But the point of it is that Mina Shirakawa beat Toni Storm, and I'm cool with this because with every championship open challenge match, that they do where the champion has to be pinned twice to gain the title, you have to you can't have Toni Storm win all the time really, or any other wrestler win all the time because it breaks physics and all that, So I'm very, very happy with the fact that Mina won. You want to establish her to the audience. You want her to have matches, so you have to do matches with you have to do matches with her. The next one was they did a Sabu tribute, and they had Taz, get on the get on camera and then talk about it, and he got very, very emotional, and it kind of was a little heart wrenching. But I also like how they did the Sabu gesture, him pointing to the sky. And I really wish they showed everybody doing that. It's the same thing with what happened at AEW, at AEW All In when they did the Bray Wyatt tribute, where everybody was everybody was waving their phones really, And I also appreciate this as well because I know even though it's because Taz is there and there's a lot of wrestlers who were inspired, I appreciate AEW doing a tribute to Sabu because there's a lot of wrestler companies that will have that type of mentality of, oh, well, he's an ECW guy. He had some time in WWE. He was here maybe for a week or two. Why should we care really? So I like that. They respect him. I would even think that, even with Bray Wyatt, that whole thing that the fans did and AEW doing these big shots of the Wembley Stadium with everybody waving the phones. He's a WWE wrestler, but that was very respectful to say, hey, he does matter, and that's cool, really, because, wrestling is wrestling. John Cena passes away, God forbid, really, and they do a tribute to John Cena on AEW, say some kind words, that's okay, really, because it shows that, hey, wrestling is not just, well, you don't exist because you're not in the opposite company, really. It's okay to do that. It's okay to do that, and it's actually very respectful to say, hey, you know what, we can look at people as people, so I appreciate that. And also, too, for professional wrestling, for shows to be good, you got to have some, variety of emotions. You had some humor with the Hurt Syndicate and MJF. You have Ospreay and Hangman being an opener where, you're oh, this is a really awesome match. Are they going to function? And then you just had Mina Shirakawa and Toni Storm, and you kind of know they both have some sex comedy and that stuff, really. So, and then you have this kind of be the sadder part of the show, really. So you kind of had a fluctuation of different emotions. The next thing is that you did a promo with Nigel McGuinness and Danny Garcia and Stokely Hathaway versus an FTR. So I was a little worried about this one because I don't know when they're going to have the match. I pray to God that they have the match at AEW Double or Nothing. They need to have this match because Danny Garcia needs to be a star. He has really great mic skills, and ultimately they don't have a lot of matches on Double or Nothing. So you have to say, hey, Kyle Fletcher, Anthony Bowens, Daniel Garcia, you have to make them stand out. You have to build your next generation. Every year you need to build your next, level of talents and stuff like that. So give them pay-per-view matches. So that's good. I also like what Stokely said. Nigel, you barely beat hepatitis. That was a really great burn, because, I'm not sure how he got hepatitis, if that was an STD or that was just because, in the ring you have blood all over the place. And then there's also wrestlers who do drugs. So that was a really great, burn. And then Daddy Magic comes out and saves Danny Garcia and Nigel McGuinness with a crowbar towards FTR. So I really like Daddy Magic because Daddy Magic and Daniel Garcia, they have really, really great voices. They can be really great tag team. You throw Nigel McGuinness, they can be a great trios team. But Danny Garcia and Daddy Magic, they need to be a tag team. They need to be very well pushed. There's a lot that they can do, really. So I really think that, as I said, Danny Garcia is one of those people, in my opinion, that he needs a backstage lawyer. He needs somebody to really also be there to say, hey, this is the best way to use Danny Garcia. Because he does have something. He does have a really great voice. And I think he needs to be more serious, more like fighting for the company, fighting against the bully type of thing. Like, really, he needs to kind of be like, Mr. Righteous. He needs to be almost like a young John Cena, that kind of committed, I'm fighting the good guy battle type of thing, and I think that he can be something. Like, there is potential in Danny Garcia, but it does come down to the presentation. That's going to determine if he's going to succeed or fail. And the last match was Jon Moxley versus Samoa Joe. This was the worst match on the card, because with Jon Moxley, I kind of figured out his big issue. The thing with Jon Moxley is he's very, what's the word? He's very slow. He takes his time too much. He draws things out too much. He's almost like me after I work so much overtime. Like, he kind of feels like he's very tired. He kind of feels very gassed, every single time he moves. And I think that that's kind of what hurts a lot of his matches, really. And I'm not sure why that is. I can understand if he's doing a more slower style to piss off the crowd. I can understand if he's narcissistic, or I can understand if he's somebody who has had a lot of battles. So we may get close to a Jon Moxley retirement, and maybe that's one of the reasons why he's the heel now, is because they want to give him a title reign to be like, here's a retirement gift for you. So I think that those are some theories about why, maybe he wrestles slowly. But also, too, as we kind of know with Moxley, he comes off as a narcissist. So I think that's possibly one of the reasons why. So throughout the match, the crowd is really, dead and silent. And I can understand, this is not really a good Jon Moxley match, because Jon Moxley matches are more hardcore. They didn't have a lot of energy. Jon Moxley needs to drink a bunch of coffees, or he needs to go to Tony Kane, smoke the Ashley Larry. He needs to do something to kind of get a little bit of a jump. Really, he needs to Gunnery Sergeant Hartman from Full Metal Jacket saying Jon Moxley, he moved like old people fuck. He needs he needs something to kind of be like, okay, move your ass, really. That's kind of what hurts the thing. So Moxley goes through a sequence of moves. He moves slowly. It's very off-putting. And the other thing, too, is that they both get very bloody, and they do that during the commercial break. You never, ever do that. Always have bloody spots or something epic happen on camera. You don't save that for the commercial breaks, because that is stupid, because then everybody's like, what happened? It feels like too much of a jump cut. Samoa Joe hits a atomic drop, a Manhattan drop, senton, power bomb, and STF finish. Jon Moxley hits the bulldog choke. Towards the end, they both have a lot of energy. And then what happened was, and this was really sad, because a lot of the energy, a lot of what's the word? A lot of kinetic stuff happened outside the ring. I think what happened outside the ring was better with what was in the ring. So Hobbs put Wheeler through a table, and I also appreciate Cesaro and I forgot her name. Cesaro and the girl, they threw Willow into Marina Shafir into a guardrail, and I appreciate. I applaud AEW for doing this, because it's going to be in Arcade Arena 5-on-5 really, and you have to have women getting hit by men, and that does two things, because honestly they're wrestling each other really. So in a gang, if it's a gang of men and women, the men will be attacking the women will be attacking the men. The men, they'll be double teaming on women, they'll be double teaming on men. So I really appreciate AEW for doing this, because that makes a lot of sense. That's realistic, and then also makes Willow look stronger, and makes and it makes Marina Shafir look stronger, because they can take hits and keep on going really. I appreciate that. And Willow is a bigger body woman. She's a badass woman. So it works. It works very well that this would happen. So I give them a lot of points for that. And then the other thing that I would say is that, and it's also feminist too, because it's saying that, if the girls want to get down and fight and fight in groups or gangs, with women and men. If it's like an intergender group and an intergender group and different genders are fighting each other, that is feminism, because it says, hey, a woman can get can deal with an ass whooping and keep on going, really. So I was very applaud AEW for doing that. I would also say that the Young Bucks come down, and then Omega comes down, Okada comes down, then Speedball Mike Bailey comes down and attacks Okada. So they may be setting up Speedball versus Okada. And then the Death Riders and the EPs beat down Omega and the Ops. Swerve Strickland comes down, he climbs the cage, and he dives onto the bad guys. And then also Matt Jackson has this large remote to raise the cage or lower the cage. And I didn't really like that because it felt too cartoonish. And I've said this many times that that's one of the things that hurts AEW, is that they get into cartoon land a little too much. The Young Bucks should not be fidgeting with a cartoony size, overly large remote. That was bad. Whoever made that decision should be suspended for a week, because they had to get rid of that cartooniness. And they announced that there's going to be anarchy in the arena. They have not announced the participants. So overall, really great show. So what the main event's going to be. It's going to be anarchy in the arena. More than likely, it's going to be the Ops, which is going to be Samoa Joe and Powerhouse Hobbs with Swerve Strickland and Willow Nightingale and Kenny Omega. So that's that 5, and then it's probably going to be a mix of Gabe Kidd, Marina Shafir, John Moxley, Claudio, and one of the Bucks as well, really, and Wheeler Yuta, so it's going to be that 5, really. And then also you have the Young Bucks, which could interfere, and then you also have possibly Hook and Shibata coming back as backup if the Young Bucks interfere. So, and then also you have Hangman, and you don't know what direction he's going to go in. So there's a lot of different outcomes. Then you have Okada and Speedball. So there's 5 versus 5, and then each group has their people to help them out, really. So and then you have Orange Cassidy, and then you have maybe Darby Allin. I'm not sure if he's going to come back on time, really, but you have a lot of different routes that you can do. And then also too, you have enough people to say, hey, if you have the Young Bucks interfere, you can lead to a blood and guts match, which is usually a television match. So I really think they made a lot of very strong options with the show. I'm very, very pleased, and I'm very, very happy with it. And I would all say this is one of the best shows that they've done in a long time. Definitely the Boston show is the best show they had. But ultimately, the big thing that they did was that they didn't have way too many matches. They didn't have way too many story. And also, too, bada boom, bada bing. They did not violate the 10 count rule, which is a huge issue with AEW. They really just focused on, they really focused on saying, hey, we got to obey the 10 count. I don't remember one time during the show they violated the 10 count rule, so I give them points, really. Overall, great show. They also built, a bunch of matches to the card. They built Tony Storm and Mina Shirakawa. Okay match, because that's not happened in a while. They've also built the Sons of Texas versus the Hurt Syndicate. I'm a big Dustin Rhodes fan. Hell yes. You built Anarchy in the Arena. Hell yes. So right now we have 5 matches for Double or Nothing. There could be Nigel McGuinness and Dan Garcia versus FTR. I'm okay with that match. Or even if you throw Daddy Magic and Stokely Hathaway in that. So there's between 5 or 6, potential matches. So overall, really great show for that. And then you had Mark Briscoe and Ricochet just get in a beef, really. So there could be 7 matches, on this card. And then I'm okay with that, because with Anarchy in the Arena being an hour-long match, you have to have maybe a maximum of 8 matches, because you do not want to have a show that goes to midnight and then you have Anarchy in the Arena. You have to know how to just not put way too much stuff on there. But overall, really, really strong show. So I'm really excited. And also, too, you don't know if there's going to be double duty for Bobby Lashley. It's going to be Bobby Lashley versus the Sons of Texas. Maybe that's going to open the show. And then the penultimate match will be Bobby Lashley versus MJF or something like that. So yeah, it was a really great show. They made a lot of really great choices. one of the best shows I've seen, this year, really. So it's really awesome. I have my plane ticket. I'm going Double or Nothing, and I'm going to watch some off the wall crazy bullshit.